I call the Monday, April 22nd, 2019 work session of the Portsmouth City Council to order. And Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Clark.
Here.
And I'm just kind of doing this off the top, so forgive me. Mr. Glover.
Here.
Mr. Moody.
Here.
Mrs. Lucas-Burke. Here. Here. Mayor Rupp.
Here. All right, we have a quorum. Dr. Patton.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of City Council. The first presentation this evening, Mrs. Elizabeth Gooden, Director of Human Resource Management, and City Attorney Solomon H. Ashby Jr. will bring back for your consideration this evening 3 OPEB benefit items. HRA, the $200 fire and police retirement allowance, and the $100 retirees increase consideration. As City Manager, I'm seeking City Council's direction to address these 3 items going forward. The second group of presentations all relate to the FY 2020 General Operating and Capital Improvement budgets. Lifelong Learning, Capital Improvement Budget FY 2020 to 2024, Mrs. Gloria Washington, Budget Officer, will present. Civic Organizations, Mrs. Gloria Washington, Budget Officer, will present. FY 2020 Community Development Block Grant Review, Mr. Bob Baldwin, Deputy City Manager, will present. The final update this evening, Mr. James Wright, the City Engineer, will provide an update on 4 areas: the Pavilion Mast and Canopy replacement, the Churchill and Bridge replacement, the Crawford Gateway Quarter Revitalization Study, and the Dominion Energy Work Plan and Lighting Initiative. We'll start with Mrs. Gooden.
It's okay.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of City Council. My brief presentation tonight is a report back on the city's other post-employment benefits. First, we're going to talk briefly about the retirement allowance. We were asked to come back and kind of show the trends as far as it relates to those individuals who are currently receiving the retirement allowance. And I'm also going to briefly go over a little bit more about the health and reimbursement HRA. With this presentation here is, in essence, again, it's information that was requested that we bring back, and it shows you the age distribution, if you will. It shows you the current time. Fire and police are actually in blue. We currently have about 100. We have 186 members, and I trended them all out to our last one. And this is current. We still have some members of the fire and police retirement system that are still actively working. But this
these are, excuse me, may I?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, Mayor.
Are these are actual retirees?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
So to read that blue line, we have 186
And the fire and
fire
police.
police and 40 in the supplemental.
That's correct.
Okay.
And what it does, it just shows you our trend line. So with fire and police, currently as of now, we'd be paying out our last retirement allowance in the year of 2038. And for also PRS, which is in green, we're currently at 40. And with the current trends, are about 10, I believe, active participants still working in the PRS. And we're trending to actually end on 2018. As it relates...
2028.
Excuse me, 2028.
Yeah.
Excuse me. 2028. In essence, what we were trying to show, and I'd say this, as it relates now for our current funding, again, with keep in mind that as with each year, as individuals attain the age of 65, they're going to be dropping off. And so with our funding, currently now, our funding for our fire and police from now until 2039, it's about $4.3 million for fire and police.
Wait a minute. Say that again.
Say that again, what I just said? Basically taking everyone through this life cycle, if you will, how much money we'd be paying out over the course of the years from everyone that's currently here, from currently now to getting down to 2039. It's about $4.3 million. For our PRS, there's actually, looking at a little bit less, it's about $301,600,000. Questions on that? Some of the things I think you can kind of see with some of the trends. Typically what happens throughout the years, you'll see some of the groupings. You can see where some of the grouping people, as far as fire and police, when they retired together. So there's average, I'd probably tell you in some of them. I think the greatest amount that I saw was a dip might have been about 14 people at the same time, around about the same age. There's more people in our fire and police, and keep in mind they're going to pay out a little bit longer because they can actually, after they do 20 years, they can actually come out. My memory serves me correctly, for fire and police, we have someone there who's probably about 47, 48 years old.
Just a long time.
Well, 2039 is only 19 years out?
20
20 years.
It's 20 years out.
20 years out.
20 years.
2039.
Yeah.
That's when the last one would turn 65?
Yes, based on currently just what we have now. It's not taking into account anyone who's
So
still,
this is the supplement that you're talking about?
yes, for the retirement allowance, yes, sir. Let me clarify, this is for those people who are receiving that $200 monthly allowance that was established back in 1974. This is not participants and receiving their annuities.
Hate to be so dense, but would you
No,
give
you're
the
not.
numbers again for both police and
Sure.
fire?
For fire and police, for fire and police, 186.
No, I mean the amount.
Oh, the amount, I'm sorry, sir, Mayor. 4.3 million.
And in the supplement,
And for the supplement, it is 301,600,000. Excuse, 301,600, excuse me.
600,000.
$301,600.
Oh, 301,000.
301.
600.
In the
For a total of 4.9 and 4.6.
Yes.
Over 20 years. So that's 200 and some thousand dollars per year then. Is that correct? That number is right?
Yes, I would say that'd be about right. But it's also, you have to keep in mind, let me share some information that's a little bit different as far as the numbers that have been previously reported. As you know, if any type of retirement benefit that you have, if someone is married and they're separated, we've had what are called, quadros, qualified domestic relation orders. In some of the past numbers that were actually communicated, they had the quadros, or the qualified domestic relations order, separate. In keeping with the time and how they would actually get it, I've actually rolled them back up. So that's why there's some differences in some of the numbers there. Our next one is our health reimbursement account, our HRA. Again, we provided this, something that was implemented in 2015 for our post-65 retirees covered under the city's health plan. I just want to clarify with this is a plan that's actually closed. Anybody current now who retains the age of 65, they have to terminate off the city's health insurance. So this number here won't be growing in that regard. So it will always be declining over the years. Currently, as far as what's being set aside, is about $1,400 per retiree annually, and it's about $400,000 that's actually set up in the current budget to pay for these benefits.
Can you go back to the curve? How many total retirees do we have in police and fire and supplemental? No?
186.
I mean, if you don't know, can you?
No,
give
I
me information?
don't. I could get it to you before the end of the night, but I don't have it on top of my head.
Tomorrow night's fine.
Okay, yes, sir.
So it's not 186 and 40?
No.
No, that's
So
just in this plan.
This is
That's
just
1,000
people
something.
receiving this $200 allowance. That's
Okay.
all this is. There's,
It's becoming clear.
You're
In
right.
my-
Yes.
Yeah.
It's that curve, it tests my understanding.
Yes, sir.
That curve is the curve of people who are 60 or 64 and younger.
correct.
Because if you're over 65, you're not on that curve.
That's
That's
correct.
Right.
Correct.
Got it.
And who are retired?
Yes,
Yes.
and they are retired.
And at the midpoint where we're 2028, where the supplemental PRS, supplemental one ends, and it's 109, the number at 109 for fire and police, where are we at 2028? I know we're at 4.3 million and then 300,000 on the green line.
About half.
That would be, let's see,
Probably half of the 300.
it's probably about half. You're looking at 109, times your $200 dollars.
So the 2039 is the total amount, the 4 point,
That's yes, the 4.6 is everybody running all the way out,
all the way out
through.
to,
PRS is going to actually stop right about here.
right.
And for fire and police, we're going to tend to be, there was a greater difference as far as, if you retired under PRS, you had to do, of course, you had to do more than just your 20 years. You had to do about 30 years, if my memory serves me correctly. And also keep in mind, the other thing it's going to do, if you're greater numbers, there's way more people in the fire and retirement system, just as a virtue of the size of the city,
Right.
what you're going to need for public safety individuals. That's going to have a lot to do with those numbers.
Dr. Patton, do we pay that out of the retirement fund or out of the general fund?
Where do we pay the, it's out of the general fund. Yeah, it's out of the general fund. It's not out of the retirement fund
So
for
it
the
doesn't show up
supplements.
as a liability.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't show up as a liability,
Mayor, we need to check that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we need
We
to
We
let
need
us
to
check that.
check that. Yeah, we
Yeah.
need to check
Yeah.
that.
Let us check that. We can get it for you.
While you're checking, can you do what would be the net present value of all the payout for both?
Net present value for all the payouts of both. Okay.
Both systems.
Yeah.
Well, we do know it goes into their retirement amount. It does.
Other questions?
Just to be clear, this is the $200 that we're
This is the
paying.
retirement allowance.
No
It's the
consideration of
$200.
anything above this.
No, this is just anybody who's currently retired under the Fire and Police Retirement System or the Portsmouth Supplemental Retirement System, who is currently retired
Right.
and who is younger than the age of 65, henceforth, they're still receiving the retirement allowance.
Okay.
That's all this is, just that age distribution.
Right.
Now, this 4.3 and 300,000 is in your proposed budget for next
Yes, it
year.
is.
So it's balanced with.
Yes,
Right.
with that in there.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
Good, Mayor?
Okay.
I think we're all up
I
to
think
speed
so.
now.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So we will get those, that information
Yes.
for you and get it out to you. Okay. All right, Mr. Ashby.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the City Council, I just wanted to give you a bit of an update. I've shared some information with you all previously, but with regard to the question of the $100, the ability to provide $100 a month to Portsmouth Fire and Police retirees. As I said to you before, the city code provides that increases and adjustments are to be made by a percentage. In order to accomplish the suggested change in our closed retirement system, the city would have to depart from its historical treatment of the retirement system. And one, in some respects, we'd have to rewrite the city code to offer a benefit to the fire and police retirement system and not the general employee retirement system. We would have to potentially rewrite the code to allow for a lump sum allowance within the retirement system where the code currently provides for a percentage. We would also have to consider revising the interpretations of the code in order to allow adjustments per retiree if we wanted to, by percentage, adjust each individual employees to try to approximate a $100 increase. Again, in considering that type of increase, there are some considerations of fairness and appropriateness in as much as I believe the fire retirees currently, on average, get a higher payout than the supplemental retirees. And these adjustments, if they were put into the retirement system, would in fact probably reduce your funding levels and thereby increase your annually required contributions going forward. And I've shared some of that with you all going forward. And so that current number of about $20 million that we pay between debt service and annual contributions is liable to go up with that particular proposal. That's all I have for tonight. If you all have any other questions.
And Dr. Patton, your budget doesn't contain any recommendation for a increase in percentage-wise for retirees.
No, it does not.
Well, I think it's important to note that historically, we've given general wage increases without giving fire and police increase and vice versa. So, you know, an argument can be made that that's not fair, depending on which side, which group that you're in when the salary increase comes down the pike. You know, the whole thing with the $100 was to realize that when many of these retirees retired, wages were extremely low. And, you know, as we said here now, we're talking about trying to get our current employees up above the poverty level, when actually some of the widows and widowers that retired years ago, they're way below the poverty level. So that's what this $100 is about. It is about fairness. And we've been discussing it for a long time, and I think it's time to see if we have a consensus to do something about it. As you know, I support it.
Any other comments?
I would be willing to support it. But where do we find the funds that's going to increase the actual hourly and the long-term goal of what we would have to pay out based on what City Attorney just presented to us?
Well, it would come out of the retirement, existing retirement fund, and we would have to fund it to the level needed to offset that. That's where it would come. There's no magic formula where the money appears. It just, we just got to determine if we feel that's a priority. I happen to feel that.
They put up the money.
But we don't know if our police and fire and our supplement comes out of retirement fund or general fund yet. Right now, we don't have that answer yet. We'll find that out tomorrow.
You know, that says we're talking about two different things there.
But if we're talking about taking something additional from,
That $200
general
has
fund.
been in there for a number of years,
74.
since '74.
I think that's what Mrs. Gooden said. She said 1974.
Nate, do you have any comments?
No, but talking about the increase and also looking at these allowances, with their allowance and the HRA, you know, I'm not in favor of taking anything away from the retirees. You know, I know we're discussing about giving them something extra, but at the same time, you know, try to give them an increase on this side, but if you take these away from them, you end up going to taking more away than what we're giving them. So, you know, I definitely don't want to take anything away. And, you know, and I'm with Lisa, you know, I'm on board with just, you know, if there's a way to figure out. And I understand, you know, what our city attorney has told us as well about being fair, you know, to all retirees. And, you know, I subscribe to that statement too.
You want to?
Yeah, I just would like to ask the city attorney, based on what you just went over and the email you sent, so if there was a decision to add this $100, we're talking hypothetically here, then there has to be some changes to the charter and some other things have to take place if we're going to do it based on what you described, if it's going to be done in a fair and equitable way.
Certainly,
Charter or code?
code, city code.
Code, that's what I meant.
City code.
City code.
There will be some need to adjust the budget also and find the dollars for it also.
Right.
Okay, everybody said something except for me. I would feel better if we were going to do something that we do it across the board and we do it as a percent. And not as a dollar amount, and not just for one group. And it might be useful to know if in 0.5% increments, what would the cost be to go up on retirement benefits that we're currently paying out by 0.5%. And then we could double that for 1%. We could then triple it for 1.5%. And so with the consensus of council, I'd like the city manager and her team to come back with that information.
We can come back.
But this,
You got that.
I've always had problems with this proposal, and I have told the group that's come and talked to me that, use the word fairness, that if we ought to do it across the board if we're going to do anything. So with that information in my mind, we can determine what's the cost if we do it across the board by percent, and then figure out where the money would come from. Any problems from getting that?
No, we'll have that to you tomorrow.
Okay.
No, no.
We'll report back on that tomorrow.
All right. Next thing.
You ready to report? The next presentation, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council, is lifelong learning, and I'm going to yield to our education liaisons before I am asked to go up and make the presentation.
All right. So Nate and I, 2 years ago, well, for the last 3 years, we've been riding up together to the VML, so we get to enjoy the session and we get to also talk about it on the drive back. And we had heard something at the VML conference that other localities, well, in particular, Henrico County and Roanoke City were doing. Of course, Roanoke is a county, so they had to get approval, but the cities can decide that amongst themselves. And they came up with an idea that they would increase the meal tax, which would provide them additional funding to be able to give increases that their schools need. And of course, their school systems are aligned pretty much with ours in Portsmouth, struggling school systems, cities, struggling to find additional dollars to fund the school requests that they're needing for teacher raises and other school employees. So VML had suggested that it was brought up that Henrico County and Roanoke City had done something called Eat Out for Education, and they came up with the figures. And of course, every city is different based on your population of what you would need to bring in. But we looked at some of the figures, and something along the line of 1 cent, just adding 1 cent to someone going to eat in downtown Portsmouth to their meal, a $10 meal that would cost them with tax somewhere around $11.25. After you add 1 cent onto their meal would be only an additional about 5 cents. So it would increase by not that much. So you would not really feel it, but you would still be able to take those dollars of the increase and apply them towards education. So a 1 cent would give us like 1.3 million.
1%.
1% added on to that meal tax would give you 1.3 million. 2% would give us 2.6 million, which is what the schools are asking for. And if we want to be bold and go with 3%, that would give us 3.8 million. And this would be a way for everybody to pay into it, because everybody eats, everybody goes out for lunch, everyone comes out for dinner, and this is not just Portsmouth residents that are being taxed with the tax.
Can we?
But this would be an opportunity for us to do this in lieu of increasing the real estate tax.
Okay, and that's where I was going. This is about giving the schools more money.
Exactly.
And I had proposed to give 2.6, but use the real estate.
Right.
And what I'm hearing is that you're proposing, instead of the real estate, that we go from the meals tax.
Yeah.
Let's find out where we are in our minds about giving the schools more money.
Okay.
Is anybody against that at the table?
No.
I'm not against it, but I want to make sure we know exactly how the existing money is being managed.
Okay.
And Mayor, in fact, you had mentioned a few weeks ago the need to have an audit. And after we get through this budget cycle, I think we need to do that. And also need to look at perhaps merging both finance departments.
And when I mentioned audit, it wasn't a forensics audit, just trying to figure out which number is correct.
Sure.
Is it A or B?
Right.
But it sounds like to me that we do have, if not, at this point in our discussion, there's a favorable consideration to give the schools additional money with recognizing your condition that,
Conditionally.
yeah, okay. Anybody against that? Now the question is, where do we get the money? And you're proposing a different alternative
Yes, than the real estate tax.
Presentation.
Right, and, Lisa, we were together when we first heard about this at VML when we were in Richmond. And some of the stuff I found interesting was when they gave us the presentation, there was a lot of pushback from the restaurants in those jurisdictions. But as it turned out, they didn't lose any business at all. And, actually, from the way it was done, they actually increased the business. And the other, the side what I found this was more interesting is that 1% of the meal tax would bring us more revenue than 1 cent on the real estate tax. So, and it's shown that about 40% of the income on the meals tax is not from that jurisdiction's residents, because we have tourism and visitors and everybody else. So everybody else is helping pay. And it's just like when I eat in other jurisdiction around here, I'm helping their city out. But it just, it seemed like a very viable method of funding the schools. And as we've been talking about, working towards a funding formula with the schools, thought this was a very good step to get us going in that direction. And I agree with Bill about, finding out the funds, but I believe that would be a logical step in working towards that funding formula to move forward.
And the reason why I asked that question of all of us, because if there's not a sentiment to give them more money, then we don't need to discuss it, whether it's your plan or my plan.
Right.
But may I ask you a question, though? Was that a generalization that 40% of any locality's meals tax comes from outside the jurisdiction? Or is that
research
just
we've done.
Portsmouth?
That's some research that's been done, that was
By the
provided to
VML.
us in our, in our conversations. That was some numbers provided to us.
All right.
Would you like to?
So I assume that you have some additional stuff that you'd like to share with
Yes,
council?
yes.
Would you like
Dr.
to?
Patton
Yes.
was helping us out with a PowerPoint.
Which one do I press? This one, okay. Give me 1 second. Okay. Okay, it's gonna pop up. Okay, now how do I get it? She's gonna try it again. Oglesby, does Oglesby know? Miss Oglesby, do you know how to bring it up where it'll be a large screen?
I know how to do that.
Okay.
Do it.
All right.
Are you going to send?
While we're waiting, so the candidates for giving additional money
What is
would
the
be
issue?
the real estate tax, the meals tax. Can anybody think of any other source of revenue?
Yeah, I actually had thought of something. I didn't know how viable it was. So we created a risk management fund. The city council did to move the dollars from the risk management fund from the school system. Is
We can't take that.
Yeah, that fund,
right, hold on. I'm going in a direction.
Okay.
I know
that's
it's
a
a
previous council,
right,
not this
right.
council.
Okay, but I know it's a restricted fund. But the council made the resolution to put that fund in place, right?
A council a long time ago did.
Okay. But the question I'm posing, there's currently today, I think there's $5.3 million or $2 million in that fund. Is that kind of accurate?
That's the,
Based on what
Yeah.
the budget said. Just as the council years ago created that fund and we reinstituted that resolution or whatever, why do we have to have that resolution? Is it something that's absolutely necessary? And can this council make a change to that resolution and free up those funds? And create something else, maybe an overhead expense fund that's not so restricted, that doesn't give us the flexibility perhaps, if there are leftover funds, we can still put them or earmark them for what is needed.
I think that's a question that we need the city attorney. The problem exists, like on any fund, once you deplete that fund, and you're using the money for ongoing expenses, what do you do next? Do you face the music now, or do you face it 2 years from now?
Right, and I guess that's a valid point, but I'm not talking about depleting it. What I'm suggesting is perhaps taking, I think what the schools were asking for was somewhere in the realm of $2.6 million.
Yeah. So that's 2 years, though. I mean, that would be.
I understand, but I'm not finished yet. We were actually, that would be for this year. You said that years going forward, we were going to look at a funding formula. So that would perhaps buy us some time to put the formula in place, and then we wouldn't have to revisit that again. It's an idea, just you asked me for an idea, I'm just thinking out of the box.
That's fine. And I think the city attorney needs to give us his opinion on whether or not those funds are restricted. I'm not saying your idea is bad, Shannon.
No, I know you're not saying that, man.
Okay.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the City Council, the fund as it's construed and constructed is for unexpected losses and some might call contingencies. The assumption always is that's a one-time sort of occurrence. I think the issue you all would wrestle with is how do you pay ongoing salaries with something that's considered to be for unexpected and one-time dollars. That would be the dilemma.
Well, historically, council has avoided doing that. If it's reoccurring, that we haven't dipped into a fund to fund a reoccurring expense, which obviously this would be.
And my question is, I thought that we had to have $3 million every year in the risk management fund and build on that every year.
We do that for the city's OPEB fund.
Right.
The
Risk management is no requirement on what we have to have in there.
Well, again, the city has for the school system, it is this one particular amount that's set outside. The city has its own policies and procedures that govern its risk management fund, as you might say.
I think that code section that Shannon's making reference to goes back to the 70s.
Correct. That's correct, ma'am.
Dr. Patton, can you orally give us the information that you're going to do by Slack?
Yes, I can,
Or
sir.
do you want to postpone this until?
No, I could go with, Deborah says she'll be in a second, but we can go on with the other two presentations, which she should be able to pull up, and then I'll come back with this one.
Okay. We'll
Okay.
park this one for the time
Yes.
being. What's
Could
the
you,
next one?
could you go on with the next, you're ready, she says she's ready, Mayor. Slow down.
I just gotta pull it.
All right, I'll go start. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council. This evening, I will introduce a potential funding source. to propose for City Council's consideration as part of the FY 2020 budget. Among the many local taxes levied by Virginia localities, there are 4 excess tax on meals, transit occupancy, cigarettes, and admissions. For this discussion, we will focus our attention on the meals tax rate. Let's see.
Wait, one second, Doc. She's going to put it on the slide.
The meals tax rate. The meals tax rate is a flat percentage assessed on the sale of prepared food and beverages sold at food establishments. As you can see from the table before you, and that's the table, thank God, Portsmouth current meals tax, or restaurant foods tax, as it is described in our budget book, is at 6.5% as compared to the rest of the region. Researching all Virginia localities that have thought outside of the box as a means to address increasing educational services, the presentation outlines a similar proposal to address educational funding in Portsmouth called Dine Out for Education. Yes, sir.
That 6.5% is on top of the sales tax that's levied, right? It's just like
Yes.
if you were to buy a shirt.
Yes. Mhm.
And so it's 6.5 plus the, whatever that sales tax is, which is,
The Virginia sales tax.
yeah, about
Right.
6%.
Right.
Next
All right, go to the next one. Okay.
We get a percent back.
Well, part of it goes to HR tax, 0.7%, then some comes back to us directly, then
Okay.
some goes to education.
Right.
Nearly half the households in the city dine out at Portsmouth restaurants. Annual impact to a typical household that eats out regularly at 1% meal tax increase is about $19 annually. 2% meal tax increase is about $38 annually. And 3 cents meal tax increase is about $57 annually.
Before you go, what is the basis for our assumption there that half of the households and
How did we get the half of the households?
I'm sorry.
How did we come up with the half of the households working with Mr. Harris?
He used the Bureau of Labor Statistics.
Bureau of Labor Statistics.
okay, how frequent is that one half? Once a week? Once
Yeah,
a
we have to get
month?
back down. No, we don't have that. We'll get back with you on it.
Once a month at least.
Right.
By any chance, did we check with the Commissioner of Revenue's office to see what the numbers were in terms of, what the restaurants brought in terms of perhaps revenue, or get some data from them?
No,
to
we-
see exactly what our local restaurants are doing and perhaps use those numbers? Because I think they would be more accurate than what the Bureau of Labor Statistics has.
We were just looking at the percentage of people that eat out.
Okay.
Okay, that's what we were talking about
Okay.
specifically. Could you go to the next one? Portsmouth has not raised the meals tax rate in over 20 years. Portsmouth has maintained its real estate tax constant for 3 consecutive years, as you're aware. And in this budget, we propose to not increase the real estate tax. Portsmouth ranks, as we all know, 10th among the 133 localities in the state. And we know that we have the highest amount of tax-exempt property among all of the cities in the region and really in the state. For your consideration, if you increase the meals tax rate from the 6.5 to 1% increase, it would generate approximately $1.3 million. 2% increase would generate about $2.6 million. And 3% increase would generate about $3.9 million. If we looked at 2.5% increase, it would generate about $3.2 million. One of the things that in looking at how Danville, Roanoke, and other cities help to increase the restaurant patronage tenfold of what they thought it would be when they started. It was through a very aggressive promotional and awareness campaign. And I'm going to ask Mr. Pace if he would speak to that, which he is our marketing and communications director.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. In an effort to try to make sure that we create top-of-mind awareness for this campaign, if we do it, we're looking at 1.7 million people residing in the Hampton Roads DMA. The target audience for this multifaceted campaign would be the entire region. The media plan will be comprised of print, include regional publications, newspapers, magazines, flyers, posters, restaurant guides, table tents for restaurants. It would also include electronic media, radio and television to include PCTV and local network television. Interactive media, which would be online, by buying banner ads, also doing advertising on social media. Digital message board and billboard advertising. Social media, of course, we have about 45,000 subscribers between Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Nextdoor, and YouTube is not included in that, but about that number. Our e-blast messages, of course, will go out to all of our people that are in our list, including Port City, as well as the Portsmouth Community Connections. And we would also partner with the schools so that they can get that information to their students and parents and everybody else who would help us to spread the message about the campaign. We would include it on our telephone on hold messaging. We would do a banner program in different areas where we have banners currently to encourage them to eat in our restaurants. Stage announcements during some of the city events. Last year, just for an example, our Sunset Thursdays, we had about 24,000 people that came to that event. So that's a good way to communicate that information to them. And also, we are talking with IMG to possibly communicate that information on their boards. Even though we don't have the marketing partnership with them anymore, they say that we are able to use their boards to communicate any kind of campaigns that we have. So that's another way of communicating with people that are here in the city of Portsmouth. And here again, we will look at direct mail. We have a program guide that goes out to every household in Portsmouth. We could also do that through our water bill inserts. And Daniel Jones is working on a mobile advertising platform that we can use by which we get people's telephone numbers. We can send out instant messages to them relative to things that are happening in the city, not only just advertising, but weather events, inclement weather, whatever. And so once we do that, we're unlimited in terms of those information that we can get out to them through a mobile site.
Now, is this a in Portsmouth campaign or a regional campaign?
It's a regional campaign.
Okay. It seems counterintuitive. Help me. If I lived in Ocean View and I get this flyer, it says, eat in Portsmouth because your meals tax is going to support the Portsmouth public schools. It seems counterintuitive that I would drive from Ocean View through the tunnel, pay the tunnel twice, and pay a higher tax than Norfolk if we go higher than 7.5%.
We wouldn't send a flyer to them.
Well, he just said it was a regional campaign.
It's a regional campaign in that it's going to appear in regional publications. However, we're not telling people to leave your city and come eat in Portsmouth. If you're in Portsmouth and you eat, this is what's going to happen when you spend your money. You're going to get the benefit of helping education in Portsmouth if you're in Portsmouth eating. Our goal with the campaign wasn't to tell people to leave their city and come eat here. However, if they are interested in helping education throughout the region, that might be their choice. I don't know.
I think that's a stretch.
Well, I think when they hear from, I'm sorry.
So here are a couple of concerns I have. You know, I applaud the effort. You guys, I think this is great work. But I'm gonna make a statement, then I'm gonna share my concern. In Henrico County, who you use as the example, they have a population of 314,000 in Henrico County. The median income in Henrico County is $66,000. In Portsmouth, I think the median income is $42,000. That's just some demographic and some dollars. But my concern is this. We talk about these things, we talk about creating partners within the community. I've talked to some of my friends in the restaurant business because I spend a lot of time in the restaurants in this city. And I can tell you, particularly some out in Churchland, they're not too keen on having an additional meal tax. And let me give you a quick example. One of the sandwich shops out there says that a lot of her patrons come in and say, well, your sandwiches are higher than Subway that's right across the city line in Chesapeake, and I can pay less to go there. My point is this: if we are going to embark on this type of program, we absolutely need to go talk to our local restaurants and our businesses, and we need to get them to buy in. Because we said that we were going to have partners. This council said we were going to create partnerships within the community. I'm for anything that raises the bar and creates additional dollars for education, but I'm for doing it the right way.
Well, Shannon, I hear the same thing. I hear the same thing from restaurant owners, and I've been hearing it for a good long time about the impact of the tolls. And that is driving some restaurants to look at either making a decision to close, which they've done. We know of a restaurant in Fort Norfolk that closed because of the tolls. Some restaurants are putting their eggs in other locality, the metaphor of eggs in another basket. I think that this is just another nail that we drive into the coffin of our restaurants in the city. And I said that when we discussed it a couple months ago.
Well, I don't, the thing is, I think there's a lot of benefit to these restaurants because basically they'd be getting advertisement from the city that we're funding the bill, that they're not paying for advertisement that could bring people to their tables and spend their money. And, everybody's talking about, well, if you raise it, people aren't going to eat in Portsmouth. I would like to know if anybody in here, the last time they ate anywhere, looked at their receipt and calculated what the percentage was on the meal tax. I look at it to calculate the tip that I give my waiter or my waitress, but I couldn't tell you what the percentage was. It doesn't say it on the receipt. It hasn't stopped me from eating. I've eaten in every jurisdiction around here, and it depends on where I am that day because I work everywhere around. Obviously, it hasn't stopped me from eating anywhere, so I just, between that and the real estate tax, we had discussed it, and we thought this was a more viable option. And, putting information out, everybody was saying, well, Portsmouth has the highest. Well, looking at this a couple slides ago, that's obviously not the case because Newport News and Hampton are 1% higher than we are.
Can you go to the chart?
The pink chart right there.
I agree with you, Shannon, that if we do this, there needs to be a huge discussion with our restaurant operators and owners. I think it would really be treacherous, dangerous to go be the highest in the region. And we have a perception, one last thing. There are actually restaurant owners who feel that we're the highest in the state. But they haven't seen that chart.
And that's right, and that's,
Some-
from
that's
getting bad
8, 9.
information or whatever
Right.
else. And
Yeah.
those numbers, Hampton and Newport News, are actually the same rate that it is in Richmond, that one of these articles has, that they're doing it. So they're at the 7.5. They're not at some astronomical number. And, we're not saying let's surpass everybody, but if you look at the funds that would come in from 1%, even if we equaled, Newport News and Hampton, that's not putting us the highest. That's putting us on a level market with two of our neighbors. And, you look at some of these other ones, Virginia Beach is lower, but they have so many other things that they can get taxes from that we don't have that availability. So we don't have tourism like Virginia Beach does, so they can afford to keep that lower.
Right. And I think the campaign is going to be to educate everyone on the whole process, on what what it can bring to the table. And also, I had asked before, I didn't know if we could provide it, but the percentage of persons who work in the city of Portsmouth who don't live here. We have a lot of people who work here every day, and then they drive across the bridge, drive across the tunnel, and they go back to Chesapeake, they go to Virginia Beach. But while they're here, they can pay something to aid us in, helping our schools. So we're trying to capitalize on the people who don't live here in the city. And the campaign would be to educate the people on the whole process, what the percentages are, how they help education, how it doesn't take from the basic homeowner. And if you look at, the percentage of homeowners versus those who live in apartments or public housing or some of the other things, you're taxing the wrong people. But this way, everybody could pay into it, including the visitors and the tourism. And we're looking at revitalizing our whole Crawford Gateway revitalization. So this is not just the narrow mind of the small thing that we have now. We're talking about growing and bringing in more restaurants and bringing in more opportunity.
I got that.
And the public hearing will allow those businesses the time to come in and voice their concerns.
Well, here's a suggestion for my colleagues on council. Well, why don't we ask the city manager to have a town hall meeting with the restaurant owners pretty quick.
Yeah, we have time.
To get their feeling on any increase on this. And let them tell our management team so they can tell us what they hear. And make it for all the restaurants from our western border to our eastern border, from our north to the south.
The only issue I have with that is, like I spoke, the information we got from VML is everybody in those other jurisdictions, all the restaurants were against it until they found out it didn't hurt them. So the perception is now all the restaurants are going to say it's against us, but they're not the ones paying the meal tax. It's the residents. And I will say, everything goes out on social media now. Everything on social media, when it mentioned the real estate tax, everybody was 100% against it. I don't think I saw one comment that was for it. But since I've been posting information about a possible meal tax, there has been a lot of positive comments. Of course, you're going to get a lot of comments that say we don't want any kind of tax increase. We want y'all to go back and revisit the budget to find a way to give the schools money. And this is how we're trying to do it, because the schools and teachers are asking for money, and I've looked through the budget and I can't find a way to get it. So that's where this proposal came from. But I will say there were a lot of positive comments when I posted about this that would be in favor of this as opposed to the other tax.
And I'm glad you did that. I think that's good feedback. I wouldn't call it scientific, but it's good feedback. My concern is a Richmond or a Henrico doesn't have a tunnel toll. That approach is $2. And if you're coming from any place that's east of here, you're going to either have to pay a toll twice, and depending on the time of day, it could be a peak toll, or you pay, if you're going around the long way, you're going to pay extra gas and extra time. I understand the logic, I understand the argument. I'm just concerned that it's going to drive a coffin nail into our restaurateurs, and I think we need to hear from them. And I think we need to hear from them pretty quick. Bill?
You'll hear from them, and I tell you what you'll hear, that they don't want it. The restaurant industry is hit with a lot of taxes, a lot of overhead in running a restaurant. Competition is fierce. I worked as a supplier to that industry for 40 years, so I know that you will hear loud and clear that they don't want any meal tax increase. By the same token, talking about partners, we also have partners with our homeowners and property owners in the city, and they've also weighed in. They weighed in not long ago, and I think it was over 54% said they didn't want a real estate tax increase. So
It's like picking poison.
yes, it is. And that's why I think we need to maybe take another look. Shannon mentioned one option, if that legally is an option. It'd be something we haven't done in the past, but that doesn't mean that we can't do it now. But there may be other things. I don't want a meal tax increase, don't want a property tax increase. And I can certainly see where the schools want to retain quality teachers, So I think we need to work a little harder or even smarter and see what we can come up with in the existing budget.
To speak to your point about that fund, that's like one-time money. I would rather take it from the
Risk
city's
management.
unappropriated fund balance and just bite the bullet.
Yeah,
With the notion being is that next year we'll have a formula.
Right, and that was the other recommendation.
I think going that way, we're going to end up with a buzzsaw from the schools that not only would take the money, but we're taking it for a different purpose. I
That would be
would
2.6.
feel more comfortable taking it from the unappropriated fund balance.
I don't disagree, but I mean, I don't think there's any harm in investigating it to see if there was something
He's
we
going
could do.
to check into it. But one-time money is one-time money.
Right, exactly, that's, right, we're not looking at a recurring expense, we're looking at a one-time thing.
Yeah.
I mean, and I understand going forward, but it is a reoccurring expense in the essence that when we had the presentation talking about the funding formula going forward, the funding formula would never be less than what they're getting now. So if we get that money to them now, it is reoccurring in that
It is.
respect.
It
Right.
is.
But,
Right.
I mean, I want to give them the money, I'm not saying I don't,
Right.
but I'm just saying technically it is reoccurring, but we're all trying to find out a way to do it.
Right.
It's
It's
just,
kicking the can down the
That's
road
it.
because
Right, but to your point, here's another point to what you guys are proposing. I think if we rolled something like this out the right way and not threw it at them and got some real feedback, check with the revenue, commissioner of the revenue, see what the dollars are looking like in terms of what revenue we take in from our restaurants.
Even if we do a half.
We could have a better conversation.
and
Already.
we get that figure from the amount of,
Yeah, right.
from the
And-
sales tax revenue that we get for the meals tax.
and I agree, Shannon, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with that, if we don't jump into it now, but that's something to look at going forward as part of the funding formula, but, that's what we need to work to for next, budget cycle 2021.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Well, I saw some hits tonight, but I didn't see a consensus on asking the city manager to do a town hall meeting as quickly as possible with our restaurant operators and owners.
I
How
thought
do
y'all
y'all
were
feel
gonna
about
do it.
that?
Y'all want me to
Well,
get it in? What do
I
you?
think that's good, but I don't think
I think he said he
at
didn't
this
want it.
point, for this
What it
budget,
says.
I think they're gonna feel like
They rushed.
we're rushing into it.
And if we don't have the consensus to go that route, there's no use wasting our business owners' time at this point. So if we're looking at going with an unassigned fund and maybe pushing this into the formula as that's worked in over the next 6 or so months, then, something to be looked at.
I've got a lot of heartburn about this one. I mean, I could possibly get there, but I'm not there. Some restaurant owners say the tolls don't affect me. All of my customers are either coming from the west of here or from Portsmouth. But that's almost a lone voice because most of them are saying that the tolls have some impact. Well, it sounds like to me we've got a consensus that we want to give the schools more money. Can we talk about the amount, 2.6?
2.6.
You
That
got a
was what they
different
were asking
number?
for. That was what they were asking for in their proposal.
Do we have a consensus to take it out of fund balance for this year to get it done with?
I'll support that.
Okay,
I support it.
okay.
I will.
I will too. So this is a good idea, but we need to let it grow some legs. The consensus is that
Oh,
we-
I heard I heard
Yeah.
the mayor. I heard, just our bond agency
Okay.
rating. Okay,
Be all right, we're still within the limit.
no.
Based on the numbers I saw.
All right, what's our next item?
Oh, our next item is a capital improvement budget, Ms. Gloria Washington. No,
He didn't, I'll explain to him. I'll explain in between pieces.
It's not. It's okay.
Is that church?
It won't change. Okay.
Put the date on the bridge.
I don't understand what.
Something about the computer.
Mayor Rowe, Vice Mayor Lucasberg, members of City Council. This evening, I will highlight again for City Council the FY 2020 Proposed Capital Improvement Plan. This presentation will include previous ongoing projects for enterprise funds, new requests, and general fund CIP. I will reference the specific project detail page numbers throughout this presentation. As we have reiterated before, the Capital Improvement Program is a 5-year plan that addresses the procurement and construction of capital assets as well as ongoing city infrastructure needs through replenishment and replacement projects. Our CIP program areas, there are 9, are sewer, water, drainage and street improvements, education, industrial and economic development, leisure services, municipal facilities, parking authority, fleet management, and we have industrial and economic development twice, but it's only should be included on the first slide. The Government Finance Officers Association, known as GFOA, lists critical areas that are essential in the development of the city's capital improvement program. The criteria listed on the schedule and on the next slide provide the team evaluation criteria to prioritize and recommend capital projects over the 5-year period. Again, the first year is our proposed year, FY20, and the remaining 4 years, 21, 22, 23, and 24, are our planning years. Ongoing enterprise fund CIP projects that we have listed are sanitary sewer overflow, and before I go further, I was going to have you go to each page, and we wouldn't go through every detail, but if you were to go to page 14-11 in your budget document. Under the tab CIP all the way to the back.
Did you say 14?
14-11. 11.
Yes,
Capital.
capital improvement. Yes. This project sheet is regarding our sanitary sewer overflow elimination program. If you look under, right below that under program funding, you'll see that we have proposed for FY 2020 $6.5 million. This project provides for the replacement and/or rehabilitation of major segments of the aging sewage system, and it's also to reduce overflows in our collection system and comply with environmental regulations. You'll see the program funding the planning years of 13.4, 5 million, 5 million in 23, and 5 million in 24. Those again are planned years, and we revisit the CIP program every year. If you look in your schedule of activities on the right bottom of your project sheet, you will see the outline of project management, design, and construction. Most of this funding, your means of financing, is 62.8 overall for revenue bonds, transfer from Public Utilities Fund of 7.6. And this is the total. This is the total for all the 5 years again. First year being proposed.
This is pretty detailed information, and this is a format that we've used for some long period of time.
Yeah.
For
every
about
project.
probably 10 years.
10 years?
Yes.
10 years, yes, sir.
Are there paper copies of this available for the public?
Yes,
Because we have
they are-
been criticized that we don't have the detail, and it's obvious that we do.
Yes, it's in every library. It's online.
online.
And it's
It's online.
always
It
been
is
this
online,
format.
yes, sir.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. We won't go through all of these. Let's go to supervisory control and data acquisition, which is pre-labeled SCADA, and that's on page 14-25.
SCADA, right, public utility.
Okay, for this project, you will see that we've got $3 million that's proposed for 2020. Again, for the planning years, it's $3 million for each year. This is for the evaluation and replacing the supervisory control and data acquisition system for the Lake Kilby treatment plant, water storage facilities, and sanitary sewer pump stations. And if you look under the operating budget impact section, you will see information here where there's preliminary engineering report has been completed. And this is the result of a multi-year, multi-phase replacement, which is the $3 million that we've planned each year. This funding is requested based on preliminary estimates of $15 million over a 5-year plan, and will be refined as specific projects are developed further in the process.
Any questions on this?
Are those mandated updates
Yes.
in the water system,
Yes.
federal or state?
Well, it's standard is the issue. It is an electronic control system. It's I wouldn't call it federal or state required. It's standard in terms of being able to control and measure those necessary elements of the water treatment system. And as you all are probably aware, one of the few sort of what I would call high security areas in the city that most folks don't know is your water treatment facility. So when you talk about federal concerns about terroristic activities and those sorts of things, our water treatment facility is on the highest end of those areas in terms of responsibilities from a security standpoint.
Yes, SCADA.
Correct. And then the last one that we'll talk about on this slide is stormwater drainage facilities repair and lake management, and that is on page 14-40. And this is funding, you'll see again, budgeted 2020, and then for $500,000, and then $500,000 in the planning years. This funding is to address lake pond issues throughout the city. It includes the dredging and retrofitting of lakes and ponds to include structural repairs. Its dredging of the city's lakes and ponds is necessary to establish the original lake depth, remove organic materials and sediment, and enhance water quality. And again, this funding source is from the Stormwater Fund, stormwater rates and fees that's provided to citizens.
Apologize.
You're fine.
An example would be, and this is kind of new, the pond at the Churchland Library. That would, let's say it's a private facility. We've had some that have these BMPs. They're privately owned BMPs.
There are no privately owned buildings.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council. This fund is for those city-owned and maintained facilities, not for private facilities. So the one at Churchill Library is city-owned, and so that will fall in its
Can you give an
category.
example of a privately owned BMP?
The one behind Kroger.
Yes. Okay.
Behind where?
Kroger.
Kroger.
Does this include the pond at City Park?
Yes, it could.
It could?
It does.
I'm
It falls within the category of the ones that we maintain. It is not currently part of the program, but based on the ongoing studies that we're doing and the analysis that we're asked to do by council, it could be included as part of that. But typically the ones at both Bidaway and at City Park, because they're golf courses and not specifically stormwater management, the way we traditionally take up, they're more of while they do take and treat stormwater, they're not part of the program. We treat them separate for the current time being.
I know the one at City Park is not on the golf court side, and I would take it that's somewhat of a BMP, given the asphalt in the parking lot and the road and everything there.
I wouldn't know, Mr. Wright would be our
I'd have to look at the
expert.
design calcs and go back to the system, and that's part of the analysis that we're currently doing.
We do the maintenance on BMPs for school facilities.
We have taken that under our, as of 2014, we've taken that.
And I would only assume that it's the newer facilities like the high schools that probably have.
It's all the ones. So the BNP at Norcom, they have some at James Hurst Elementary out in the front, and so whatever BNPs they have are now part of our program. Even the green roof on top of Simonsdale Elementary.
I'm sorry.
Even the green roof on top of Simonsdale Elementary.
But Bill's right. I mean, those ponds at City Park need to be empty.
He's indicated they're studying them, and they will probably be coming
They
under
may
there.
require a retrofit to pull them into the program, based on how they were designed.
Questions over here?
The BMPs,
BNP.
BNP? B.
Bravo.
Okay, good.
So you'll see two terms. You'll see stormwater management facility, which is abbreviated, and best management practice, which is also same thing.
No.
And we are requiring all the private newly constructed BMPs that the developer include aeration. Is that?
That's been a
accurate?
requirement
Long, yeah.
since like 2009.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
I do have another question, and it relates, if I may.
Okay.
Who regulates the private BMPs as far as water quality? Is that us or DEQ?
It's a part of our current stormwater permit based on the new permit. That responsibility has gone from DEQ to the city, and we've been given time during our first permit cycle to come up with a program.
So we do the state policing
Yes.
because it's been
Mandated down to us. Yes, sir.
That's cool. And I say that sarcastically.
I was getting ready to say, oh,
You know, a great example of a well-managed BMP that's the private sector is the one at Hidden Cove.
I passed there
Y'all go past
yesterday.
there very often.
Yes.
But,
Yes.
that's-
Yes, it is.
Water quality is great, aeration, landscaping, it's got it all.
I was by there yesterday and looked at it.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, James.
The next area that we will review is CIP project request. And if you could turn to page 14-52, Twin Pine Roads widening. We won't talk about all of these, but we'll point quite a few of these out.
While you're there,
Yes.
we had a citizen come to council about sidewalks in
Yes,
this area.
yes.
Is that included in this project?
Yes, Mr. Wright had already started, and he'll speak to it. That was already considered before she came to council, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Twin Pines Road widening was originally a VDOT project back in the day before the urban program went away. Now that we're back into the new cycle of how we get funding from the state, we've actually revisited that project to include not what the original intent was the project was, but to actually widen the road because it is on a bus route and add a shared use path and some turn lanes. Is a project that'll probably go through one of the state funding programs once we develop the concept plan a little bit more.
So we're addressing the citizens' concern
Yes.
with
Yes.
this project.
Yes.
This is a related question. It's really for Billy. Can it be quantified, the advantage of having sidewalks? Does it increase the value of a neighborhood?
It certainly increases the aesthetics of the neighborhood, so in turn, over time, I think, yes, sir, it does.
Is there a formula in your business, in your profession?
Not really.
Talking about sidewalks, when you brought up, the individuals that came and spoke about the sidewalks, I think they were referring to actual High Creek as opposed to sidewalks.
That's getting ready to raise my
Because they're talking
hand.
about that's where that, large median is with no sidewalks on either side.
Right, yeah.
And hedgerow, which is no sidewalks at all, and Churchland schools are right there.
But does this project address that? I had
This
the wrong-
project does not address Hofstra Creek, however, we are looking at that as far as that and several other requests that we've heard from City Council and from the manager's office to develop concept plans. So basically, we don't have funding to just go install sidewalks. So there are a number of funding programs through VDOT that allow you to put in sidewalks. And so based on what we've heard, our plans develop concept plans and then go after state funding to actual construct the projects. And those are in the queue.
How expensive are sidewalks?
Much more expensive than it used to be now because you're installing the sidewalk. You're installing sidewalk in an area that wasn't previously impervious, so now you have to consider stormwater management. And that increases the cost by about 40%.
40%.
Yeah, so just ballpark, Hofstra Creek, prior to the stormwater rules would be the low 100s. Now you're talking about probably like $500,000.
In reference to Hoppers Creek, traditionally all of our sidewalks in the city are concrete, but I know a lot of places are going to the asphalt now because I think asphalt, somewhere like, it'd be more like a trail as opposed to a sidewalk. And I know we had that large median going down Hoppers Creek. Instead of putting a sidewalk on both sides, could you possibly run something right down that median and possibly do it as a trail with the asphalt as opposed to concrete? I believe it would be a lot cheaper.
The type of material has not been considered, but the intent is to actually go down the median and create a shared use path. And the cost of concrete versus asphalt at that point, it's mostly a stormwater management. So,
Is there a BMP that runs down the median? Oh, that's
no, well, that's part of stormwater management that we'll have to put in. There's no drainage as far as the BMP on Hofstra Creek currently.
Where in the world would that be placed, the BMP?
We'd probably have pockets that'll look like landscaping, that'll be bioretention, and we'll have underground pipes to pick up and just take it to a point where we can connect to a drainage system either at either end of the parkway.
other questions? But you guys are working that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we are.
Revenue sharing applications and transportation alternative applications are due this summer. And so we've been in discussion with the planning department. We plan to submit, I think, 3 to 5 applications for that type of improvements this upcoming cycle, and each one is for 2-year cycles. So we'll be submitting applications for 2021 and 2022, I think, is how that goes.
Okay.
And so you'll see those come before you in a resolution because we need support for the applications.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move to the next slide, which is ongoing general, well, let's go back.
Before you go.
Let's go back.
Any questions on anything else on that slide?
We'll move on to the next slide, which is ongoing general fund CIP projects. And if I could have you turn to page, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can we do Churchland Bridge? Is that?
Yes, 14-33. I'll be bringing this slide back up. If you look at your project sheet, you'll see that this is an ongoing project that we have $34.5 million that's been appropriated to date. That's prior year CIP funding. And if you look at the means of financing below in the right-hand corner, you'll see about $21.6 million of this, 0.8, is VDOT funding. And this project provides funding to replace the 2 westbound lanes of the Churchland Bridge with a totally new structure. I'm going to defer to Mr. Wright. I have information here that says the project will start sometime in the fall and will take 2 years to complete, but I'll defer to our city engineer.
And he's listed to come back tonight with an update, so this is perfect timing.
So I'll go ahead and do the update now. If
That's fine.
So, route for bid. So it's currently being advertised on our bid board. We planned open bids in June, should there be no questions. That happens to push the bid date back. Once again, it's the replacement of the northbound lanes, which are the lanes going into Churchland, and rehabilitation of the southbound lanes. It's a 2-year project, 6 months for the rehabilitation, followed by the 18-month replacement of the northbound lanes. And it's approximately a little bit over 60% state funded, and we are managing the project.
We've been accused of a breach of promise. Is there some way that we can get one of those portable signs and maybe put the status of, is there a place in the right-of-way in either direction that could be done? Or could we put a coming soon, there's the no grabbing fishing sign?
Well, as we indicated to council previously, we will be creating a project website in May, and after bids open and we know the contractor and get some of those documents in place, we'll be having another public meeting. So,
To the mayor's point, a lot of people are going to probably not believe it until they see a
We could
bulldozer or
advertise.
something
right.
out there.
We could advertise it, Mayor.
What has been, is the permitting process is what's dragged this thing out
it
so
was
long?
obtaining the bridge permit from the Coast Guard.
From the Coast Guard?
Have you gotten that permit now?
It's awaiting signature. They've told us it was okay. We should actually have the permit signed sometime this week.
And how much of a delay did that actually cause?
Took a little over a year to get the permit.
To get a permit?
Yeah.
It's
They
a
had to
federal
study it
permit.
and approve it.
It's two federal
government.
permits, and so it's to get one from the bridge, and we also get one from the Corps.
Corps of Engineers.
But seriously, let's think about something we can do now that says,
Well, we can think about that.
Start
Yeah. I had a question, Mayor. Is there possible, right, we had that accident about 2 weeks ago on the bridge. Is it possible that we could say to go across the bridge, you go 25?
oh gee.
Well, I'm just saying, we're getting ready to, it's what is it, 35 now?
Yes.
It's 35, but it was right at the top of the bridge, at the crest. The car stopped, the person got out, and if I'm coming 35, and that's how the gentleman got hit. So the question was asked by citizens, can the going across the bridge be lowered? And it may not, based on state guidelines of whatever the,
Well, if it's a work zone, it'll already be, it should be posted.
so it will be reduced when we start the bridge?
Speed limit will be reduced while they're working in the work zone. We've already reduced the speed on the Churchland side here within the past 5 years and brought that down. So it's 35 on both sides and 35 across. I don't necessarily think you want to lower it any lower than that. You
Okay.
probably cause more accidents than not.
We discussed how we're adding in some of the bills, like the water bills and things like that information. Perhaps we could start a campaign before the actual construction begins to send out that information. Like the bridge construction is coming. Keep your eyes open for developments in the bills, because we are already going to be using that to deliver some other information. So perhaps that's a low impact way of getting the information.
Good
Just
idea.
one way of using it.
All right. Mr. Pace has it. We'll do it. We can get that. All right, Ms. Washington.
Now, the funds have been appropriated. You have $6.4 in future bonds, and we'll roll that up in one of our future bond issues.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes.
Yes.
You can say.
So, question, so what we have proposed is exactly what we need? I mean, if we go
Yes,
over,
yes. We're not going to.
We're
that's
talking
where the
about the
future
Churchland
bonds.
Bridge?
Yes.
No,
We're looking
that's part of the 35.
at, right.
See how it adds up?
They'll be issued this year. Okay, nuts.
Okay, can I have you turn to page 14-66, the new middle school?
You ready for me?
Yes, and I will
Yeah.
defer to Dr. Patton.
All right, if you would look at 14-66, you will see that we have moved the middle school out to 2024. And in discussing with Dr. Brace, in fact, Dr. Brace and I met today, we talked about the school, and I'll say the school. It was in November and December when engineering and MB and the group working toward looking at exactly what it is that they were interested in designing. The discussion started with a middle school. I think the capacity was 800, and then the discussion started with a K through 8, which is the model that is being used now across the country according to MB. It was determined that where we had developed in our 19 budget, the projection of having the school built by 2022 was not realistic with the things that have to be done. First of all, we're working in the budget that we have currently to get the site, which was identified, the buildings that are on it down, grading. Also, Dr. Bracey indicated that they would start their school capacity to look at the schools that they have, what the capacities are. We even talked today about, and this is just, we were just talking, that I shared with him that Washington and Lee in Arlington built a new high school around their existing Washington and Lee High School, did not close the school, kept it on the same ground that it was. And I brought that discussion up because we all visited the Churchland Middle, which we know that the stairwells and the things, and so the questions, and I shared this with them, the questions are, if we're going to leave that school as it is, it still doesn't meet, it's 60 years old, it doesn't meet the upgrading that it needs. And so with that said, he indicated that he would be taking the lead on the school capacity over the next couple of years. I told him that the CIP is a year projection, but looking out 5. Next year, we'll come back and see how much has been done with what it is that he's proposing to do. So that's where we are with
Bill's got a question.
Well,
yes.
I think with decrease in enrollment.
That's exactly
And I know some always say, well, if you're down 200 students this year, you can't do anything. Well, that trend has been going on for about 10 years. So, yeah, 200 times 10 years, yeah, that should reduce something. The number of buses, number of bus routes, perhaps the number of elementary schools. Look at the number of elementary schools that we have, what,
14.
14. And even some of them, Charleston Elementary is a lot older than the middle school.
Oh, yeah.
By a whole lot.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's a good move to, let's not rush into this.
No.
Let's do an analysis,
Yes.
see what the real capacity is, see what's needed,
Right.
and see where those funds should be spent.
Right.
Same way with buses. I don't know if we've been putting $1 million in school buses, because we found out that's really not a mandate
No, it's not.
from the state.
No.
And two, we discovered that the state also gives us, what, 600,000 roughly?
I think it's 623,000 this year for school buses.
623,000.
Right.
So that's been 1.6 now for a while. So once again, going back to that 10-year trend, something should be reduced
Right.
somewhere along the line.
So that's where we are, and he's moving forward after we get through this on school
$1 million
capacity.
was on our side of the budget, right?
Yes.
It was in the CIP.
Yes.
Correct.
Right.
And it's in this CIP.
No, we did
Yeah.
not put it in the CIP.
Just want to make sure.
Yes. Right.
Yes, if you actually turn to page 14-67, you will see that the $1 million has been removed for 2020 to the outer years. Again, based on what Councilman Moody was saying, it's about 623,000, like
Yeah,
Dr.
this
Patton
year
reiterated.
and next
And we've
year.
been
And the
funding,
schools know this.
I have not discussed it with Dr. Bracey, the the 1 million, but he'll know it tomorrow. But we have discussed the issue of this was not a mandate forever. That has been discussed before. And that there are funds that come in every year from the state for school bus replacement, and it says that, school bus replacement.
And that's reoccurring?
Yes, they get that,
From the
yes,
state?
yes,
Recurring.
yes.
Yes, it's actually included on their projected 2019 and 2020 basic aid per pupil amount and state local share report. In 19, it was about 621,000.
Yeah.
Projected for 20, it's about 613,000. Okay. Are there any other projects that council would like to look at this point?
Circle of sales.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was
Right.
looking
Yeah.
at. Circle of sales.
All right. He's going to come forward to talk
And that's
about that.
page
We talked about it today.
14-85.
Okay. Hold on, let them find their pages.
Yes.
What was that page?
14-85.
Everybody found the page?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so support Portsmouth Public Art needed some additional funding for the foundation work, basically the micropiles. City Council approved that funding. They provided my office some additional information so that we could determine if we could talk to manufacturers and see if we get those micropiles designed and get some pricing. The plans were not to the level that they needed to be, so we went back, asked them to revise their plan, provide some additional information. They've since done that, and we're in the process of reviewing that information to determine if we have everything we need to get the pricing.
Questions? We still have the $100,000
From Breeden.
from Breeden,
Yes, that's
do.
from the Breeden,
and that's beyond the 85.
yeah, the 85 is for the pilings.
Right.
Right, that's our
the
part,
city.
pilings. Okay. And you're about finished.
While we're on that slide, the City Fiber Network, have we signed the contract?
I can't answer that right now. Mayor, I'll get that for you now. Mr. Jones is out.
Other ongoing general fund CIP projects, and I'll defer to the mayor. Are there any projects that you would like to look at the project detail sheets?
Let's,
Go ahead.
Seawall.
Seawall? That's on page 14-120.
Talk about the next span.
Okay, so we've completed 2 sections of the seawall project. We've completed the section at the Renaissance. We've completed a section here adjacent to City Hall. We're in the process of reviewing the final plan submittal for the next phase. That'll be the phase adjacent to the old Holiday Inn site. We hope to advertise that sometime in May, and that'll take probably about a year construction, just typical to the last ones.
how did you work around the riprap that's on the outboard side?
We've provided the underwater survey showing the location of the riprap, included that in the plans, and so whoever receives the job as far as bidding on, they're going to have to supply to us basically how they plan on addressing that as part of their work plan. We're not going to tell them how to do it, but we will review it and determine if what they're proposing is acceptable.
Could you
Any
explain
other
what that
questions
is?
for that? I have a question about the pavilion. Can you give us a status report on that?
Yes.
Yes.
So, the canopy fabrication is complete. Most of the canopy has been delivered. The mast fabrication is complete and scheduled for delivery. A few weeks ago, when I was last before you, we were going over our work plan and on site. As we're going over our work plan, in discussions, we realized that we need to do some additional engineering work. There are going to be three in between 3 to 5 cranes, but one of the cranes is very large, the main crane, to actually hold everything in place. The concern with that large crane coming in the back was the loading as we cross the tunnel and as we sit and hold it of the tunnel. So we had to do some engineering calculations to ensure that the soil bearing pressures weren't going to be such that we would have issues with the tunnel and several other underwater pipes. We're clear with that now. We're moving on with our work plan. However, we will not meet our June 1 date, but our new target date is the be ready in time before the first show.
Yeah, definitely Gladys Knight.
Gladys Knight's not till
Gladys
August.
Knight.
June 18th.
Come on, Mr. Glover.
It's the June 18th show.
No.
It's the first show
No, I'm
listed.
serious.
No,
Before Gladys.
Is the operator aware?
we will talk with
We're
him.
planning to make him aware in the
Tomorrow.
morning.
Want to let you all know.
We have a meeting at the mast installers place in the morning, and after that, we'll make him aware.
Yeah, you should, because, yeah, it's,
When we got this word late yesterday, I called your liaison, apprised him, which it was 6:30 or so, when Mr. Wright came and called it to my attention. And one of the things he said is that when they built the pavilion and they had all of those cranes there, it was space there for the cranes to assemble. But now with the building being there, they don't have that space, so that's why they have to be on the back of that parking lot, which he says the tunnel runs under the building right there, where you buy your tickets. The tunnel tube is right there. And then, so they now know exactly where they can put this heavy crane.
just for information purposes, what's the width of the tunnel?
The width of the tunnel, I'm not sure. The tunnel easement is 60 foot wide,
60 foot?
and there are two.
That's both tubes?
No,
Or-
one tube, 60 foot per tube.
So it's 120 feet worth of easements.
But there's a separation between the two. That's why. So there's an easement, and then there's a separation, then there's another easement.
And this is over the
Easement.
eastbound tunnel?
Yes.
Any other questions on that one?
Yes, the transferring of the 150,000 from City Gateways project and transferring 100,000 from Water Street project, that's going to be enough to cover.
Where are you speaking of?
On page 14-113, under the funding strategy, the last two sentences says we're transferring money from 150,000 from City Gateway projects and transferring 100,000 from the 801 Water Street project. So there was some increased
Oh, that was the transfer.
increased cost, or
Right now, we don't have any increased costs. We anticipate there may be some increased costs, but we don't have what that figure is now. But right.
14-113 under funding strategy,
Funding strategy.
That was the transfer to get everything under contract.
Okay.
the last two sentences.
Recognize permit,
While we're there, on 112, the fire station, is the ball in council's court? We need to discuss the location. Is that what we need to do next?
Of what, the new fire station?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to come back to you, and you all got to tell us. Right, we will be coming back to you.
On the Sportsplex, the 400 and some thousand in the budget for that, is that just for the demoing of the buildings?
Yes.
Yes.
Nothing else?
No, they have already started all of the next phase of
In the
the
existing
parking lot, the
budget?
fields, all of that's going on right now. That's in the CDBG monies.
This is a council meeting, please.
Go on, Mr.
Do we not have the equipment or the ability to take down buildings like that? I mean, that's not a
No.
complex building
No.
or anything out there.
No.
We can't Because I remember, 15, 20 years ago.
But I was getting, wait a minute, I was getting ready to say, now, there was a time, Mr. Moody, back in the 80s, the city had its own demolition. In 86, when I came, it had its own demolition group, which was Joe Straight and those that would just go tear down something.
You don't have to go back that far.
Okay. Well, I was
We
gone.
took down Portsmouth Bowling Center. We
Okay,
did that in-house.
Yeah, no,
And that was like the year 2000 or so.
no, things have changed. You can't do that right now.
But I was just wondering, because it's $400 and some thousand just to demo the couple of buildings.
It also includes abatement. There are 3 large buildings out there,
Is
and there's
asbestos?
abatement in each building.
Asbestos.
And then there's OSHA compliance that you have to deal with
You
as
got so
far
much
as
more in there.
abatement and demolition. So, and plus, with the size of the buildings, there's stormwater management as well that goes along with that,
Dormitory is more like a jail than a dormitory, isn't it? I mean, it's got
somewhat.
Okay.
Okay.
Get back to the fire station. The $6 million is complete, design, construction, and land
Does
acquisition.
not include land acquisition.
Does
It's
not.
design, construction.
Got it.
And on the fire station, without discussing anything that we'd previously discussed in a closed session, but I thought, you're talking about the ball of location, I thought we'd passed that ball to the city attorney, and we're just waiting on a report back.
There is
Possibility.
there are 2 levels of discussion. Certainly, one presents a particular issue, but we'll come back to you all shortly with regard to where we are with regard to those. But there have been a number of discussions, but I'm aware of what Mr. Clark is referring to.
Well, I don't think that we should lose the momentum. Can we, when you say shortly, can we do this the first meeting in May?
Sure.
Yeah,
That's
the first Monday night
3
meeting.
weeks. Sure.
Bill?
And Mayor, as you probably know, tied to that is the 45 Afton situation.
Yes,
with
which we
that.
talked
Sure.
about. Right,
Right.
They're joined together.
right.
So the first Monday night.
That's the 13th, May 13th. Okay,
Everybody good with that?
yeah.
Yes, sir.
I didn't think that hers was gonna take all day.
Good discussion.
All right. Okay.
Further questions? Okay, that completes the presentation on CIP.
Just one more. Keep,
Then we have just one more.
All right. Before
very
we sit, any other questions on the CIP?
Yeah, any other questions?
Excellent discussion.
Good
thanks, sir.
Very good discussion.
Thank you, sir. Gentlemen, ladies.
And council, this has been a rich discussion.
Yeah. And Mayor and Vice Mayor and members of City Council, I would like to say for the record that over the past 2 weeks, council has met with the city's budget team in twos and gone through their budgets, asked questions, presented questions that they wanted answered as they are here tonight working in their books. They have worked over the last month in the FY 2020 proposed budget. And thank you all for doing that, being willing to do it.
Good job.
All right. This will be a brief presentation on our civic and cultural organization recommendations in the FY 2020 proposed budget. Funding allocation proposed is for qualified nonprofit agencies and organizations to provide direct services that impact the welfare and improve the quality of life for Portsmouth citizens. As you will see on this slide and the next slide, these are the various agencies that we are recommending funding in the proposed budget, and most of these agencies have received funding allocations from the city, I know probably within the, maybe further than the past 5 years, where we got the Portsmouth Volunteer for the Homeless at $21,627, American Red Cross at $10,000, the Children's Hospital of the King's Daughters at $15,000, the Her Shelter at domestic violence at $40,000, and the Homeless Assistance, which is a realignment that we did during the year of the park funding at the $83,625.
Has Park gone away? officially?
Mr. Pace, the park has gone away officially. Park.
What's Larry?
Not gone away, no. I think they're still providing some services and doing some work, but they're not managing the shelter.
Hey, Shannon?
And just for information's sake, what do we do with 15,000 that we give to Children's Hospital? I love Children's Hospital. I just don't know what we do with 15,000.
What do they do with 50?
Right. I mean, what do we give it to just the hospital for them to use as they deem necessary? Or?
This is comprehensive services for children that are in like the child abuse areas.
Oh, okay.
It's a targeted funding for that.
Sure.
Yes.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council, when the city is, social services typically has an issue with a child abuse. Those children are typically engaged with folks from CHKD to assess, follow up, and maybe testify depending on the case.
Understood. Thank you.
Have we been, at one time, all the localities contributed to EVMS?
We contributed to EVMS. It's not on here,
We
but
just
It's not in this part.
no, it's not in the organizations, but there's funding for them.
Yes.
Go on.
Okay. And then the second slide portrays, is recommends funding for the Museum and Fine Arts Commission. And this is about, I think it's about 20 organizations that we have, that we allocate funding through the,
And you shared that list
We
with
did.
us.
You all got that about 2 weeks
Yes.
ago, the whole list.
and then we have funding for the Oasis Shelter of $15,000, Westmoreland Athletics at $4,500, Starbase Victory at $10,000, and this funding that we provided before, the Food Bank of $10,000, and Friends of the Juvenile Domestic Court, $10,000.
Questions on this?
Is there another list?
Okay.
Go. Okay.
That completes this presentation. Thank you.
All right, we
One
have one
question
more.
about, those are all put in through applications, so they have
Yes.
to request this
That's
amount
right.
for
Absolutely.
every year?
Every year.
There's a whole guidelines online that they follow and what they are to submit, and a committee looks and
And does a ranking.
makes recommendations.
Can we get a list of those who submitted and maybe weren't chosen or evaluated?
Well, everybody that submitted was evaluated, but we could probably get to you what was not chosen.
Yeah,
And
just
and when we
That's
say
what
not
it's at.
chosen, yeah, we can get that to them. They may not have submitted something, and then we kept trying to get them, and no response.
This is somewhat related. We have the Civic League beautification program,
Yes,
and council had asked for some type of,
want them to come back in like a little ceremony or something.
now, where do you want to do this, council? You want to do it in here, or?
That's what I was recommending.
Okay.
And we
Deborah,
would
can
bring
we
about
get
2 at a
together,
time.
As a group?
We'll work with her to
It may
get.
not be,
Maybe we should go on a field trip and see what they did.
No,
that's not a bad idea.
but it's going to take time now. Their projects are.
Sure,
yeah,
but I'm just
it'll-
saying, I mean,
Yeah,
it might be nice to go out and see what they did in
Right.
their community.
I think so.
Or maybe go to
Have a
their Civic League
presentation.
meeting?
Yes. Now, I think we're getting a plan here. Can you all work together? and maybe come
Yes,
up
we
with
had
a-
already started talking about it. There was a recommendation for where we should have it, but
I like-
now that you all have brought it back up, we'll
Yeah.
go back to the drawing board.
Civic League meeting.
Now, if we all show up, does that constitute a meeting?
Yes, it does, so you can't do that.
Yeah.
You have to have
But we-
twos.
But it would be really appropriate to do that.
Absolutely. I just was asking.
We'll work on it and get back with
Add
you.
that on the schedule, but
It's
we will be there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we're getting a
Okay.
plan.
All right, we have one more brief presentation. No, we have one more presentation and 2 updates. And the next presentation, which you've already heard, but we're just reiterating because there was a question asked, and it's the Community Development Block Grant Review. Okay.
I'm tripping myself.
Yes.
This is not working.
Are you ready? What are you going to do on
Okay.
Crawford?
Had to go a little time. Had to go a little time. All you see is water.
All right, go.
Good evening, Mayor Rowe, Vice Mayor Lucasburg, members of council. I'll be very brief. I know you're just very recently, we're given a full presentation by Mr. Crimer on our CDBG and home programs. I just want to point out a couple of things to you since the last time we were here. If you look over here under FY20 on this slide, this is actually the official number now. We updated that from your last presentation. If you recall, when we did the original presentation, we were using current year funding as our target. We now have the final allocation from HUD. It went up about $15,000. So we've actually had, I think, 2 years in a row where there's been slight increases in our CDBG allocation, which has been good because there have been lots of rumors over the years that the programs were being targeted for elimination or reduction. So I just want to point out that is the final number. Back to a couple of things. Just wanted to hit on very quickly questions that have come up. Just wanted to point out from council discussion. If you look under the City Comprehensive Housing Study, that's been discussed. We have $125,000 budget in there. Want to let you know we've been working with the city's purchasing officer, and that project has got the RFP has actually been released on that already, so we're already moving forward on that. The second one, again, on the Poverty Initiative Task Force, there's some funding, no specific project attached to it. Once the task force gets up and running, there'll likely be a need for some resources for the task force. Want to make sure the task force was funded for any of those type of activities may come up during the course of the FY20 cycle. And then one last thing I want to point out, there's been some questions about this, the Wesley Community Center. I want to point out we have $85,000 proposed under the CDBG program for that project. That was a new addition this year from prior year. And with that was really the only changes that have occurred since the last time we briefed council. If you had any questions, anything in particular you wanted to talk about.
We're good.
The Poverty Task Force, how do they request, how do they draw down? Because I know that Norfolk State folk are ready to get going with it, and they asked me when was it going to, when could they get involved?
Well,
Not a drawdown.
yeah, both of those, whether it be Old Dominion or Norfolk State, work under contract.
Yeah, they
when the
don't
city
draw
gets involved in those processes. So they actually draw down once they're under contract.
Okay.
By invoice. By invoice.
Yes, by
Yes.
invoice.
Okay.
And we're very close, Mayor, to, and we'll get something to you before the 13th meeting, so that you all can begin to put your list together of who you'd like to be on the Poverty Task Force and the 2020 census count. We really need to have that done by the first May meeting, with you all getting some, we'll give you some information, then you all start getting some names.
Yes, sir.
Seeing Mr. Baldwin there reminds me of the status of the comprehensive zoning ordinance. Can we get a status report on that?
On the comprehensive
Redo
zoning,
the-
yes, the
Yes.
zoning, yeah, that's
We're
good,
glad
that's
to do
about
that.
finished, yes, we will.
Good.
All right.
I did want to mention one other thing that came up. Let me see if I can find the slide here. You mentioned the Sportsplex. I just want to go back and give you an update. As Dr. Patton mentioned, we have a very large construction project going on out there. I don't see right here, but it's right here, in fact. You see there's $600,000 listed. Right now you have going out there, you've got the parking lot, ball fields, walking trail, a fair amount of drainage work. If you go by there, you'll see it's a large amount of construction going on that side right now. We've included this last, what we would have considered the last $600,000 proposed CDBG funding for FY20, and that was to address some of the I don't want to just say aesthetics, but some of the aesthetic concerns have been raised about the appearance of the property, the guard building in the front, the walls with the wrought iron fencing that's looking more institutional jail-like than looking more park-like. So that would be a proposal to go back and finish up the work out there, the exterior work at the Sportsplex. Going forward, what we were expecting, you see we've got some pedestrian improvements in there. We have a couple. So we've probably been doing some crosswalk type projects. One of these we're looking at is in the vicinity, in fact, of the Sportsplex. Going forward, the CDBG fund may be a place for council to look for doing some sidewalk neighborhood improvement projects once we get past this major investment that's been going on at Portsmouth. So I'm putting that for future reference for your FY21 budget cycle.
Consideration. All right. Mr. Wright is going to come back with the Crawford Gateway Quarter Revitalization Study meeting that's coming up, and the Dominion Energy Work Plan and Lighting Initiative.
So
We're finished with the presentation.
next Tuesday, April 30th, from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at 206 High Street, which is the former Sports Hall of Fame. There'll be a Crawford Gateway meeting, corridor study meeting for the public. So it'll be staff and the consultant there to pretty much show and to discuss the project with citizens that drop by, take their comments before we finalize that document and bring it back to City Council.
Questions on that? Shannon?
Is there any way that we can get that advertisement out to the Civic League presidents and the like?
Yes.
To let them know. I know I saw it came on my computer about that upcoming meeting. If we could get it out to the Civic League presidents, we could probably have them to
He said it's already to Civic Leagues. Mr. Baldwin said they've already gotten it out to
Okay,
Civic Leagues.
very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Good question. Others?
Here's one more.
Okay, we have quarterly meetings with several agencies, whether it be government, private utilities. Dominion Energy just happens to be one that we have quarterly meetings with. At our last quarterly meeting, Dominion came in and just gave us an update on their work plan. They're on a 10-year replacement cycle. So over the past few years, they've been working downtown, Shea Terrace area, Prentice Park, Craddock, Midtown area, down to Alexander's Corner in 9 different phases. 5 phases are complete. The anticipated overall completion for their projects is 2021. Basically, it's voltage line upgrades to increase capacity, it's network and primary and secondary feeders for increased reliability, and they're also retiring some substations. Basically, they're just going in and just try to strengthen their overall network so that we experience less outages during storms and things of that nature. Secondly, they made us aware of an initiative that they're just starting in the region with LED lights. So any new lights that go in from Dominion are going to be LED lights. Anything that's in the current queue is going to go in at high pressure sodium. They asked us if there were any locations where we'd like them to start their replacement cycle. From a staff perspective, it's best, we thought they would start with the arterial roads, the major roads for cities, and then work their way into the neighborhoods. It won't be the traditional Cobra head lighting. It'll be the bot-style lighting. They give out a little bit more light. On their arterials, it'll be a little bit more intense light than it will be in the neighborhood, just so you don't have that sunlight effect that some people
Say that again. What you said?
that blue light effect that's typical to the sun when you get an LED light. A lot of people in residential settings are not used to that light. They're used to that dull orange light, and you get a lot of complaints. And so we're going to the lower intensity light in the neighborhoods and the higher intensity light on the arterial streets.
As the light burns out, they're replacing the light with sodium vapor or with...
What existing is the high pressure sodium. They're replacing those with LED.
All right, questions?
Where are they starting? Where are they going to start?
They've already started.
Which
Where
area?
have they?
They didn't indicate. They just indicated anything that's out right now.
Okay.
They're going to go back, and when they go back, it's going to go. The head's going to change out. It's going to be LED lights.
So, take for example, the new subdivision in Craddock will be LED.
Yes. And the newer phase of Newport as well.
Cool.
The lights are not going to be so bright that citizens are going to complain that the light in front of my house is too bright.
It'll be a different light. We've had a few citizens say that the light it's too bright, but it's from getting the orange glow that you don't receive a lot of light versus actual light that you can actually see what you're doing.
Well, I asked that because if you would go in the Swanson Homes neighborhood, the lights out there at night are so bright, and particularly if you have eye issues like me, you can hardly see. And you have citizens who complain that the lights are too bright. So I hope that it's not so bright that citizens just can't bear the light. because if you just drive back Swanson Homes at night, you can see anything, even the ant crawling on the ground. It's so light.
No questions?
This completes our presentation, Mayor. You're finished.
I sent you an email proposing that we create a Portsmouth Cultural Harmony Committee. And late this afternoon, I sent you an email with a proposed, and it's my proposal, a charter, and that's the best word I can come up with, a mission statement for the committee. And I passed it out in paper form before you. If you would take a look at that, and I recommend that we discuss it tomorrow night so that you'll get a chance to digest it. But it makes some assertions. It says the city of Portsmouth is a community composed of people from many backgrounds, ethnicities, and cultures, and the Portsmouth City Council is dedicated to social justice and to developing and fostering inclusiveness, respect, and a sense of belonging for all of its citizens. Furthermore, the Portsmouth City Council is committed to developing and fostering harmonious living for all of its citizens. To this end, Council hereby establishes the Portsmouth Cultural Harmony Committee, which shall be comprised of 16 to 22 citizens of Portsmouth who are appointed to the committee by City Council. Besides living within the city of Portsmouth, the members of the committee shall be persons who care about social justice, equal opportunity in all aspects of life, and cross-cultural understanding. The purpose of the committee is to explore issues of race, ethnicity, equity, and culture within the Portsmouth community and develop program recommendations to City Council on how the city can live to the commitment stated in this document and celebrate our rich diversity. I propose that we have 2 co-chairs. And we make the initial appointment of the co-chairs, and then after that, the committee will, and the reason why I suggested council, to make sure this thing gets launched in the right way, I would think that we would want people who could take this seriously and get it up and running. And I propose that the committee meet with City Council quarterly, initially, and that we provide them a budget of $50,000. And so I have copies too for the, Dr. Pat, can everybody in the room get a copy of this?
Yes.
Pass that out.
Pass it on, yes. Mhm.
And again, with your indulgence, can we put this on the agenda for us to discuss tomorrow?
Yes.
Or discuss it now if you want. But I'm really serious. We need this as we move forward.
I think tomorrow probably would be better.
Okay? Good?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're finished now.
All right, any other?
No.
With that, we've completed our work for tonight. We'll meet tomorrow at 5. Do you have any additions to the agenda tomorrow?
No, the agenda is as set.
Well,
You want me to go?
I thought you said that you had something to report on 911.
Oh, yes, I'm going to, yeah, that will be in my report backs. But
Okay.
Right, that's the city manager report back that's already on the agenda.
Okay.
Okay,
Any other things? All right, this meeting is adjourned.
all right.